Radical Radio Collective.
4ZZZ. Good afternoon, listeners. You are tuned into 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, and this is Eco Radio, Australia's longest running peace and environment radio show.
Maybe.
We're going to give us the props on that one. We are taking over your middle of the day in the middle of your week airwaves. We're just about at the end of the month and at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year too.
And at the start of Christmas.
Yes, that is correct. My name is Dave, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name is Zack. My pronouns are he, they.
And I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians of the country on which we broadcast. We are located in the city Magangin on Turrbal Yuggurrpul land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Kabi Kabi and Jinnabara country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east, we pay our respects to the Quandamuka people, and down south, we reach Common-Berry, Nagaragwal, Mununjali, Wanjirabara, Yugambeh and Bunjalung countries. There is no Crown land. Thank you very much for No Idea today. I always like hearing about how many more chemicals I am absorbing through my diet.
Yeah.
I always find that the more chemicals I consume, the more I want to consume the chemicals. So there's some kind of...
Self-fulfilling.
Yeah, there's some feedback loop going there, right? Yeah.
I also appreciate the bug themed songs today. That was really good. I really like all those cricket songs.
Yeah, I'm sure they were referencing the insects rather than anything else.
I don't know any other cricket.
I know Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, that's
something.
He was a cricket though.
Oh, okay. There you go. I didn't know that.
Okay.
Today on the program, we're going to have a pretty heavy one. It's going to mostly be covering the Sudanese Civil War at the moment and the genocide in Darfur. So this is going to be a bit more of a podcast format sort of thing for the most part of it, where I am more or less just going to be info dumping kind of about what's going on. I've written about 3,000 words on it,
nice.
so it's going to be, I hope it's going to be pretty comprehensive, but
I'll try and keep track of what everything's what's going on.
Yeah, just jump in at any point if you need, if there's something that should be clarification, and that goes out there to the listeners as well, who, if you're listening in and you're like, this doesn't make too much sense or you need clarification, please do text us in on 0420626733. So that's what we've got in store for the program today.
Yeah. We'll play some Sudanese songs, nothing Christmas themed. I'm a bit of a what do you
Grinch.
call it? Grinch.
Yes.
Yeah, or Scrooge.
Yeah, Christmas hater.
Yeah. I'm waiting for those three spirits to come visit me. They haven't yet, and until they do, I will continue to bar humbug all Christmas long.
But yeah, so we've got some Sudanese songs in the playlist today. This one up first is going to be Power to the People by Diaspora.
Yeah, Diaspora.
Did you want to say a little bit about them, Dave?
Yeah. So Diaspora is an African-Australian recording artist, producer and poet. He was born in South Sudan, but spent 7 years of his early life living in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya before migrating to Adelaide. Diaspora said on the release of this album, "When I succeed, I'm Australian, but when I fail, I'm African." I think that's a really important point to make when African migrants are brought up in the Australian media. Yeah. That tends to be the focuses.
We're seeing that with his name is Gout at the moment too.
The runner.
Yeah, where he's been doing incredibly well, and we're claiming him as Australian. Yeah.
But as soon as someone gets in a bit of trouble, they're African gangs.
How do you get your daily fix of 4ZZZ?
Maybe you tune in during your daily commute in the car.
You could just stream it on our website, 4zzz.org.au.
Or maybe you've downloaded the Community Radio Plus app to listen on the go.
You can even ask your smart speakers to play 4ZZZ or Z Digital.
Give it a go.
However you're tuned in,
Thanks for listening to 4ZZZ.
You are tuned into Eco Radio on 4ZZZ, and we just heard from Diaspora with their song Power to the People. We're going to begin with our discussion on Sudan now, and before getting onto what is currently happening in Sudan, I believe some historical context is necessary because Sudan and much of modern Africa's history is not as widely known in the West for fairly obvious reasons. So, the modern borders of Sudan were formed as a result of both Egyptian and British joint administrative rule in the 1800s, before Sudan gained its sovereignty from both powers in 1956. It is important to note that, like most of Africa, colonial powers did not draw borders considering the diverse ethnic groups present in Sudan. Most obviously, the original Sudanese borders that included modern Sudan and South Sudan placed Islamic Arab people and sub-Saharan Africans that were animist or had been Christianized by the British. Unsurprisingly, this led to many internal issues since Sudan gained sovereignty, as the government and other powerful positions in the country were dominated by ethnic Arabs. There was thus a marginalization and oppression of sub-Saharan ethnicities in Sudan that resulted in two civil wars lasting from 1955 to 1972 and 1983 to 2005, with the South achieving independence in 2011. Although these ethnic conflicts were most prevalent between the northern Arabic population and southern sub-Saharan, they were present in another part of Sudan too, Darfur, which is where the atrocities are mainly being committed today. Unlike the conflicts between the north and south, though, the ethnic tensions in Darfur did not immediately begin once Sudan gained independence and ethnic Arabs gained systematic control. This stems from Darfur being on the furthermost western side of Sudan, far away from the capital of Khartoum, and in general is rural, underdeveloped, and did not get much attention from the government during the 1960s and 1970s. So now we'll go through a bit of a history of the region to sort of like explain how things have happened the way that they have. So Darfur is home to two broad groups containing numerous ethnicities: the nomadic pastoralist Arabic people and more sedentary farming sub-Saharan African people. These two broad groups had historically been quite hospitable with one another, trading, intermarrying, and sharing governance in some cases. In fact, you would really struggle to identify differences between these two groups. They don't have obviously distinct skin colours, and practicing Islam is pretty ubiquitous. The distinguishing factor is based on language and whether they followed a pastoralist or agrarian-based lifestyle.
Yeah, right. I was going to ask whether the differences were made up or if they're actual like lines that were drawn historically. Yeah,
so it sort of like comes down to what even is an ethnicity at the end of the day, because some people just describe it as essentially a collection of people that have a shared history, and like that would apply in this case, but there's not like distinct gaps in skin color, for example. So it is just based on that agrarian, so your farming practices versus more herder practices.
Right.
Like I said, these two groups had quite strong and friendly relations, with the nomadic pastoralist people shifting from the north to the south and vice versa in Darfur depending on the availability of grazing land, whereas the agrarian people stayed permanently in the south for the most part. This system worked well for some time, but during the 1980s, desertification and drought resulted in increasing resource scarcity, and combined with the lack of economic support by the Sudanese government, Darfur and Sudan as a whole suffered severe famine. In total, about 100,000 people in Darfur died from the famine out of a population of around 3.1 million, so roughly 3% of the population.
Jesus.
These factors led to conflicts between the nomads who were searching for appropriate land for their livestock and the sedentary people, because they want land and water to be able to
feed themselves.
Yes. Some experts have described this as one of the first climate change conflicts.
Yeah, right.
So that's interesting, but very macabre and depressing.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, from the inception of Sudan's sovereignty, most of the power structures within Sudan were controlled by ethnic Arabic people, and during the post-colonial era, these power structures attempted to craft a national identity around Arabism and Islam. This causes one of the civil wars to occur between the Sudanese government and what would become South Sudan, as much of the population of modern South Sudan is neither Arab or Islamic, though this did result in some clashes in Darfur too. At the same time, Pan-Arabism and Arab supremacy was growing as a movement and ideology in the neighbouring countries of Chad and Libya, with many Arab militias popping up and violence between Arabic and non-Arabic people beginning to emerge in some of those countries. These ideologies then spilled over into Darfur in the 1990s, turning farmer versus herd tensions into political and ethnic clashes that did not exist prior to these ideologies popping over.
Yeah, right. But Islam has been around since the 7th century.
Yeah.
CE.
Yeah.
It didn't spread through Sudan before that?
They were Islamic in Darfur. So most of Sudan is Islamic. It's just that there's that north-south divide. So the south is primarily... they were primarily Christianized by the British when the British took over.
Right.
But then in Darfur, pretty much everyone there is Islamic.
Yeah.
So there's not so much of a religious tensions there. It's ethnic with people speaking Arabic and therefore are considered Arabic versus people who don't speak Arabic and therefore aren't considered Arabic. So when these Arab supremacist ideas started appearing in the region, that they obviously more so supported that Arabic speaking population rather than the non-Arabic speaking, even though, as I said earlier, there is not much distinguishing. You can't really distinguish between the two groups based on skin color. It's
just by looking, yeah.
Yeah, it's based on the language plus their their method of sustenance.
Yeah. So was there a push of specific types of Islam into the area in the 90s?
I don't know. I don't think that played into any of the conflicts at all.
Okay.
They would all just be fairly similar branches of Islam. You know a lot more about Islam's
little bit, yeah.
Than I do, Dave.
I just know that with the power of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, there's a push of Wahhabism.
Okay.
Which is a more conservative.
Everything I've read hasn't sort of pointed at that being any kind of adding anything to it. It has just been based on those herdiverse farmer lifestyles and then the language as well. To continue on from there, when Arab militias with an Arab supremacy ideology began forming in Darfur, the non-Arabic ethnicities naturally began forming their own militias for defense purposes, which is a very reasonable thing to do. Again, the Sudanese government favored Arabic people and began arming some of the Arab militias, most notably the Janjaweed, to maintain Arabic control of the region. Thus, the agrarian non-Arabic speaking people of Darfur, most notably the Fur, Mazlit and Zagawa, became increasingly marginalised and structural inequality was exacerbated. At the moment, I do want to mention that the word Darfur translates to home of the Fur people. Those are the people that the region is named after. In 2003, the Sudanese government in South agreed to peace terms that eventually led to the secession of South Sudan. However, the non-Arabs of Darfur, who decided greater autonomy, economical support and political representation, were ignored. This led to two rebel groups, the Justice and Equality Movement, or JEM, and Sudan Liberation Movement, or Army, known as the SLM/A, striking out against the Sudanese government in February 2003, beginning the war in Darfur, otherwise known as the Land Cruiser War, because of the number of Toyotas that were used by both sides in it.
Toyotas, funnily enough, new Toyotas even tend to find their way to land wars a lot. Yeah. Which is suspicious.
It is suspicious, but I suppose it speaks to the quality of their car, unfortunately. These two rebel groups picked up a number of victories in the beginning as the Sudanese military had exhausted quite a lot of its resources in the battle with the South and was unequipped to deal with these insurgencies. So to counter them, along with official military action, the Sudanese government took advantage of the ethnic tensions, supplying arms to the Arab militias, such as the Janjaweed, and gave them the license to quell the insurgencies by any and all means necessary. These actions would lead to the first ethnic cleansing of non-Arabic people in Darfur occurring between 2003 and 2005. Entire villages that housed members of non-Arabic rebel groups were considered fair targets and were razed to the ground, with civilians regularly being targeted. And since the Janjaweed and other groups were unable to be paid a consistent salary by the government, looting and pillaging was allowed. Another famine took place as crops were burned, disease became rampant in Darfur, and numerous war crimes took place. In total, the United Nations estimates that by the end of 2005, 300,000 people had died, most of whom were ethnically non-Arabic, and millions more were displaced. The population in Darfur at the time was between 5 and 6 million, so this was roughly 5 to 6% of the population.
Far out.
This event is considered a genocide by the US government, however no other organisations, including the United Nations, have labelled it as such, though they have said that there were undoubtedly war crimes being committed.
Why is that? Why would the US label something genocide but not the UN?
There was a lot of pressure from US celebrities at the time. So George Clooney, weirdly enough, he's been involved quite a lot with Sudanese politics, so there was just like a lot of pressure from celebrities and civilians for the US to label it as such. And I suppose starting to get that ball rolling. Whether you can really truly consider it a genocide, I am not sure. I don't make that distinction. But there is a bit of contention around the issue, though you can definitely call it an ethnic cleansing. Although 2003 and 2005 were the most intense years of violence during the war in Darfur, violence did not completely subside afterwards. There were still regular clashes between the rebel groups, the Janjaweed Army and Sudanese Army. War crimes were still being perpetrated pretty regularly and millions remain displaced. The next point I want to jump to is 2009 and 2010, when warrants were issued for the arrest of Omar al-Bashir, the Sudanese president who took power in 1989 and oversaw the ethnic cleansing of Darfur.
Who issued the arrest warrants?
The ICC.
Okay.
Yeah. Additionally, the leaders and commanders of the Janjaweed who committed war crimes have never been held accountable by the Sudanese government, though they have paid some lip service in saying that they would. In fact, what has actually happened, though, is that the leaders and commanders of the Janjaweed have essentially been rewarded by al-Bashir for their actions, as in 2013 they were elevated from a militia group that was partially funded by the Sudanese government to an official armed force separate from the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF. This new paramilitary group, called the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, was formed by al-Bashir as he feared he would lose his position as president in the same manner in which he took it, via military coup. So elevating the status of the Janjaweed to the RSF was done to bribe loyalty from them, so that al-Bashir could not be thrown over by the SAF.
Yeah, so he's basically paid for his armed guard.
Yeah, more or less. So the perpetrators of war crimes against non-Arabic people in Darfur now have official status and access to many more resources. Fast forward to 2019, and al-Bashir has been ousted after increasing internal pressure from a revolution that had turned into a military coup, ironically enough.
So he did get what he did.
He did get what he feared.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, the country was ruled again by a military junta composed of the RSF and SAF called the Transitional Military Council. After protests from civilians, the Transitional Military Council agreed to include civilian representatives in its decision-making process and form the Sovereignty Council of Sudan. This was meant to be a transitional government until 2022, at which point democratic elections would be held. This transitional government negotiated peace with the rebel groups in Darfur in 2020, promising them for more representation in the government, and that finally put an end to the war in Darfur that began in 2003. The planned transition to democracy, though, did not go through, and in October 2021, a military coup enacted by the SAF, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and supported by the RSF, led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo Musa, better known as Hemedti, took place. The two groups ended a power-sharing agreement, but as with most power-hungry people, they really don't like sharing. So after over a year of escalating tensions between al-Burhan and Hemedti, fighting between the two militaries broke out in April 2023, leading to the beginning of the Third Sudanese Civil War. And that is where we will end it for now. And we'll go to a bit of a song break, and we'll go and see what has happened since. How are you feeling at the moment, Dave?
It's pretty bad. Yeah. Quite complicated.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of moving loyalties.
I think it's it gets simplified like a fair amount to just like ethnic tensions, which is like partially true, but it's not like these have been ongoing historical things and have like been a result of outside factors. So like there was obviously the stuff going on in neighbouring countries with Pan-Arabism. If the bloody English hadn't decided on the borders that they currently have, this wouldn't be an issue either.
Yeah, what part does Muammar Gaddafi play in this?
So,
because he was pushing for Pan-Africanism.
It was Pan-Arabism, wasn't it?
Pan-Arabism?
Yes. Yeah, so he was a Libyan president, correct?
Yes.
So Libya was one of the countries in which these kind of like Arab militias were popping up, and in Darfur, some of the Arabic people would then go and work in these militias because it's a work opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And then when Gaddafi left power, or like some of this stuff started getting dispelled, they would then return home, and then that's how some of those ideologies ended up in Darfur in the first place.
It's a lot like how a lot of like young fit men view the world. It's like I'm strong, I'm bulletproof, I can go out there and get my money, or get my power. And they just had the opportunity, I guess, because of the region that they were in, that they could go to other countries and do that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's where we'll end it off for now. I do want to add as well that al-Bashir left Sudan in 2020 and voluntarily handed himself over to the ICC, as things were looking pretty dicey for him if he remained in Sudan. To this day, he is the only man who has been held accountable for the war crimes and crimes against humanity that occurred in Darfur from 2003 to 2005.
So what happened to him?
He's in jail.
Okay, so he got, like, The Hague?
I'm not sure if he's in The Hague or not. I'm not sure where he is. I just know he's been arrested by the ICC and is at least being held accountable to some of his actions.
Okay.
We'll go to a song break now. This is Barrambin.
Yeah, Barrambin. I found him on Bandcamp, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of followers, but he is a Sudanese artist from Darfur. This album was released in July of last year, 2024. And the album was produced during the conflict in Sudan in 2024 with very primitive tools in Port Sudan, Egypt, and in illegal migration between them. All of this was affected by disease in the mind and heart, and it will take you on an adventure from Darfur to Khartoum around 1945 in search of money, and from Khartoum to Egypt in 2024 in search of safety.
Shout out to Pamela. Thank you very much for resubscribing as a passionate subscriber. Enjoy that sweet passionate subscriber merch.
You're tuned into Eco Radio on 4ZZZ, and from the top we just heard from Barrambin with their song Jack Nonzem, and then we heard from Sandak with their song SNDK, I presume is, or Dubby. I'm not sure on that one, sorry Dave.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. They've got a few different titles, but it's from the album Simya Tape, released in 2022. The album name Simya in Sudanese culture is a ceremony held by a family celebrating choosing a name for their newborn.
It's cool.
And that was Sandak, with two S's at the start.
So we're going to get back into what is actually happening in Sudan at the moment in the Darfur genocide and what has been described as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world that has possibly even ever existed. Now, I don't really want to go through a complete timeline of battles, victories, and whatnot, because that will confuse things, and honestly, I don't really care about military actions or battles. Or
this isn't a military tactics podcast.
Yeah, that's
radio show.
That's kind of I don't want to say it's boring isn't the right word, but I'm just not interested in it, and it's more so the results of certain things that have happened that I think that's what should be paid more attention to. So I am going to focus on the humanitarian crises and atrocities that have been committed by both sides. So fighting began in April 2023 in Khartoum, and which is the most populous city and is the capital, and the fighting did not cease until March 2025 when the SAF drove out the RSF. Both sides were responsible for war crimes and atrocities in the city. For example, hospitals were targeted. In some cases, civilians were indiscriminately targeted.
Just if someone has just started listening, the RSF and the SAF, what are those?
Yeah, thanks for calling me out on that, Dave. So the SAF is the Sudanese Armed Forces, and the RSF is the Rapid Support Forces. They are the two sides on the Sudanese Civil War happening at the moment. The RSF is a paramilitary group that popped up in the mid-2010s and started getting funded by the Sudanese government, and the Sudanese Armed Forces is like the official branch of the Sudanese military, and they're both fighting each other for power over it. Yes.
So one is the government, and one is the military.
They're technically both the government.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Just one's the official military government and the other's the non-official military government, branch of the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. As of June 2024, over 60,000 civilians had been killed either directly or through disease and hunger, and millions were displaced. These figures would be even higher now, potentially over 100,000 civilians dead, and is the largest ongoing humanitarian crisis in the world, and that is before we discuss the genocide occurring in Darfur. To go back to the RSF specifically, the prime area it controls is the Darfur region, and as I mentioned in the first part, it emerged from the Janjaweed that maintains an Arab supremacist ideology. So when the fighting broke out again, they began the systematic killing of non-Arab people in Darfur again. The Mazlit people in particular were targeted from April to November 2023. In the Jananaya massacre, 15,000 people were massacred. The city of Al-Fashir is the capital of Darfur and is home to many non-Arab refugees. And in May 2024, the RSF tightened its siege on Al-Fashir, which was home to hundreds of thousands of non-Arab refugees. In April 2025, the Abu Shuk and Zamzam refugee camps outside of the city were massacred several times by the RSF and allied Arab militias, killing hundreds of people between April and August. In the aftermath of the fall of al-Fasher to the RSF in October, tens of thousands of people, mostly non-Arab civilians, and particularly the Zaghawa people, were killed in the al-Fasher massacre. 500,000 people have fled al-Fasher since the city fell to the RSF. Many RSF fighters are using Chinese-made drones to accelerate the speed of killings near their city, and an estimated 200,000 civilians were trapped in al-Fasher at the time of its capture, with many believed to have been systematically killed. So this is a massacre in the hundreds of thousands of people. The death toll remains unclear. Following the capture of al-Fasher in October 2025, the fate of approximately 150,000 residents is unknown. Disease and famine would be hitting the city real hard, though, because during the siege of al-Fasher, this is no outside supplies are allowed in. Famine.
They've cut off any lifeline to the outside,
and hospitals have been targeted and whatnot, which is that's pretty severe. Some experts have said that this is on par, or like the genocide in Darfur is on par with the 1994 Rwanda genocide, and the number of deaths in al-Fasher in 1 week are equivalent to what has happened in Gaza over the course of 1 year.
Far out.
Not to be
comparing.
But just for not context, just as a comparison, so you get the idea on how severe things are over there.
Not to say one's better than or one's worse than the other, but they're all really bad.
In total, 21 million people in Sudan are facing food insecurity, and 10 million people have been internally displaced, with hundreds of thousands of deaths. These numbers are likely to be underestimated too. And the Sudanese population is about 57 million people, so 1 in 6 people have been displaced by what's happening at the moment. The United Nations has imposed I'm going to get into some of the outside factors of this now, because I think the listeners would have gotten a pretty good idea on how bad things.
Horrible,
things that are.
Yeah, so what is the international community doing?
So the United Nations has imposed an arms embargo on Sudan, meaning the movement of weapons into Sudan is restricted. However, this has not stopped various international parties from supporting the SAF and RSF in the ongoing battles. The culprit cited most frequently is the United Arab Emirates, which is accused by the SAF of supplying munitions to the RSF, like high quality, high technology munitions, drones, bombs and the like. On the surface, this doesn't sound particularly convincing, since the SAF is quite a biased source, but multiple independent parties, including Amnesty International and Mike Lewis, who investigated arms shipments into Sudan for the United Nations, have supported this claim. Both the United Arab Emirates and RSF have denied the accusations. However, there are some images and videos circulating online of RSF soldiers having munitions boxes containing the words United Arab Emirates and Abu Dhabi written on them, so you can decide on which statements you think are true based on that. There is strong evidence of Colombian mercenaries also fighting for the RSF, and again, they are heavily linked to the United Arab Emirates. The alleged weapons and mercenaries are transported by Emirati cargo planes to either Eastern Chad, which are then transported across the border, or now directly into Darfur regions controlled by the RSF. The UAE insists that the cargo planes are only carrying aid supplies, though. Other parties have accused of being involved on the side of the RSF include the Wagner Group, which is a Russian mercenary.
The Wagner Group,
a a Russian mercenary group that primarily operates internationally and is technically distinct from the Russian government but still reports directly to Putin.
Yeah, that was the group that their leader tried to coup Putin.
Yeah.
And was subsequently killed. They have operations in different African nations.
Yeah.
And they are paid by getting mineral rights.
Mm-hmm. And they still directly, report to the Russian government.
They're still part of the Russian government. They're a private entity that reports to the Russian government.
Yeah. The SAF has also had quite a few international backers, including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey, and funnily enough, the Russian government officially.
Yeah.
So
that's the RSF.
This is the SAF.
So
the
RSF is linked to
Wagner and the United Arab Emirates.
UAE.
And then the SAF, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and the official Russian government.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Now, you may be wondering kind of like why this is attracting so many international actors to support both sides of it.
I sure am.
And it's resource-based. So the RSF that controls lots of parts of Darfur in particular, there's lots of gold to be found in that area.
Right, okay.
And essentially by supporting either side, you are hoping that if they achieve complete power, then you will get some access to those resources because you've done a favor to them. The same thing happened in South Sudan, where even like Uganda was giving some weapons and munitions to the Sudanese Liberation Army, and then those members of the Sudanese Liberation Army became the government in 2011, and South Sudan has like 75% of the oil found in both Sudan and South Sudan. So it was just about getting access to those resources.
Yeah.
And sort of like the same thing is applicable here, where you're betting on either side winning. In the UAE's case, they're betting on the RSF winning and hoping that they will either achieve a greater sense of autonomy, or they may even split into a third Sudan. And with the SAF, by supporting them, these international actors are hoping that they will get access to some of those SAF-controlled resources at some point as well. So, like, from an international perspective, none of them care about, like, the ideology. I think for what you could say, at least, there has been historically, like, some people have cared about communism versus capitalism. This is purely just let's extract as many resources out of them as we can.
Yeah.
And this is something you see all the time, particularly like regarding countries that were colonized. They then also take the role of resource extraction as well at some point. Yeah.
So like with say the French in Libya.
Yeah.
One of the reasons they were so pissed off with Muammar Gaddafi was because he didn't give any resources back to the French government.
Yeah. Yeah, so lots of these colonized countries have just been about resource extraction. And then I don't want to say countries above them in kind of like the countries that have more power than them, less issues, they then take advantage of them in a similar way that like the British or French would have historically, which like you can't really blame them for. I suppose they're looking to get not getting reparations, but looking to take back some things that have been extracted from them previously too. I want to go into Australia now.
Yes.
So Australia is potentially complicit in the Darfur Genocide and Sudanese Civil War too, as the United Arab Emirates is the largest export market for Australian defence manufacturers, with them selling approximately $300 million in weapons assets over the past 5 years. Additionally, last month, dozens of Australian defence companies were present at what could be described as a weapons fair in the United Arab Emirates, the most notable being Team Defence Australia, which is a government platform for promoting Australia's defence technology. Although Australia has officially condemned the actions taking place in Sudan, Manir Sankari from Austrade said, quote, "The UAE's extensive and ongoing defence procurement program represents real opportunities for Australian suppliers." According to Philip Kastner, a senior lecturer in international law at the University of Western Australia, while it is difficult to prove that Australians have been used by the Rapid Support Forces via the UAE, it is not possible to prove that they haven't. In countries such as the United States, if the United States sells weapons to another entity, that other entity must gain permission from the United States if it wishes to pass on those weapons to a third party. Australia does not have these same regulations in place, though. Once Australia exports weapons to another entity, Australia does not have any further jurisdiction or require information on where those weapons end up beyond that. This essentially removes Australian accountability should weapons be used in atrocities. So there's a high likelihood that at least some of the weapons Australia has exported to the UAE are being used by the Rapid Support Forces in the Sudanese Civil War.
Yeah, this is an excuse that the Australian government has used for any conflict where people have voiced their concern. They've gone, well, we don't export to that country.
Yeah.
Knowing full well that the country that we do export to then supplies them to other countries.
Washing their hands clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see it in West Papua, we see it in Palestine, and we see it here.
This is all pretty overwhelming, and I'm not going to lie, most of us are pretty powerless in this situation. There's not much we can sort of do on an individual level to stop the largest humanitarian crisis the world has ever seen. What I would say, though, is tell people about it. This is a story this is an issue that's been underrepresented in the media since its inception in April 2023 by other areas such as the Ukraine-Russia conflict or Israel-Palestine. Again, not that those areas shouldn't be discussed, but it's just this one has been significantly underrepresented in both the media and just lip service. So go ahead and make sure you're telling people about this. This is something that people should be made aware of.
Yeah, I think it is maybe easier in those other conflicts, depending on who you support. Yeah. Like, there's no
quote-unquote good guy. Yeah.
In Sudan, it's, a bit more complicated, but it is a good point to note that this is a resource war.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah, like the people on the ground, they wouldn't believe it as a resource war. They would be fighting for for what
their ideology.
Yeah, for their ideology. But all of these leaders, like Hemedti, he has had long ties to the United Arab Emirates, and so for the people who get to sit in the cozy chairs and dictate what's going on the battlefield, this is just a resource war for them to get. Yeah, more cash.
Well, thank you, Zack, for bringing us that analysis. I know that you're studying international relations.
Kind of.
And, that's a big analysis to pass out. That's quite intense.
Yeah.
I know you've been studying it for a few weeks at least to put this together for us.
We got a couple of texts in from Rob B2 who says, "Powerful stuff, guys. Thanks for playing it. We export arms like we export natural gas for others to resell. Quote, it's just business."
Yeah.
Which is very accurate. Thank you, Rob. We'll go to another song now, Dave. We're going to be playing Gordon Toowong.
Yeah, Gordon Toowong's an artist we've played a lot on 4ZZZ, but also Eco Radio. Gordon is a blind South Sudanese musician. He's now based here in Australia. In South Sudan, he was known as the King of Music, and Gordon sings in English, Arabic, and Nuer, his ethnic language. He plays the traditional Nuer stringed instrument called the tom, and I'm a big fan of Gordon Toowong. I know he played in Brisbane a couple of years ago now, but I would really like to see him again. This song is called Asylum Seeker, as he has been in limbo with an asylum visa for many years here in Australia.
You're listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future.
Welcome back. You're on 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio. We just heard then from Gordon Toowong with Asylum Seeker. I love his upbeat music, even though he sometimes deals with difficult subjects.
And up next, Dave, we're going to do a little thing that we like to call the Bushcare Roundup.
Oh, I love this.
It's a Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds, and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
So, being between Christmas and the New Year, there's not too many Bushcare-related events going on at the moment, but there's still a few. So, on Friday the 26th, from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, there is the Kurilpa Common Farm Working Bee at Potluck, and that one is at the Kurilpa Commons in Highgate Hill. And then on Saturday the 27th at 4 p.m, there is a Save Barrambin Summer Solstice Party, and that one is at Ibis Island in Herston.
And then on Sunday the 28th at 6 a.m, early in the morning, you can go to the Taringa Community Garden Working Bee. That's 9 Heroes Avenue, Toowong. And at 8 o'clock you can go to the Cicada Park Bushcare Working Bee. That's Cicada Park in Chapel Hill. Thank you so much for listening in today, folks. If you enjoy what we do here on 4ZZZ, if you enjoy what we do here on Eco Radio, you can become part of the family by becoming a subscriber, subscribing, liking and subscribing, and joining our family. You can go to 4zzz.org.au/support, and when you do become a subscriber, you get a little card, and that card actually gets you discounts in a lot of different places. So during the show today, even though it was a heavy subject and not Christmas related at all, we had a subscriber. So that subscriber then gets a little card, and that little card they can take to many different places in southeast Queensland and get a little discount, a little cheeky discount.
That's fun.
My favourite place to get a discount is Reverse Garbage Queensland. They take all these like fantastic odds and ends from manufacturers, saves it from going to landfill, and you can then get that stuff to do little projects. I recently made 2 bookends.
That's very cool.
Out of scrap wood.
And they will be over the Christmas, open over the Christmas sort of break. So head
absolutely.
in there.
They're one of the few places that will.
And if you subscribe this month, you go on to the chance to winning a $250 voucher at the End Bar in West End, and use that either on yourself or hang out with some buds there. So either way, very cool one to win this month. Anyway, that's all we have for Eco Radio this week. Thank you very much for tuning in today, listeners. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and get to spend some time with family.